I'm a big believer in stealing other people's good ideas. So, in a lot of ways, that is what I've done. I've gone out and I've looked at how other similar industries, and I always compare the DoorDash model. Looked at how DoorDash scaled, and we mimicked that early on. We made mistakes in the process along the way, but like a lot of like reading DoorDash's early go to market allowed us to avoid mistakes.
They say it's lonely at the top. They're right. But you don't have to scale your company alone. Welcome to the Scaling CEO. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. On this podcast, I sit down with top performing CEOs to uncover the hidden patterns and frameworks behind their success so you can avoid common pitfalls and accelerate your company's growth. Now, on to the show. My guest today is taking on an industry that most of us have a love-hate relationship with, mostly hate. I'm talking about auto repair. It's an industry that has felt broken for decades. Brett Carlson is the co-founder and CEO of ServiceUp, a company that is, in his words, rebuilding vehicle repair management from the ground up. And he's got the momentum to prove it, having recently closed a $55 million Series B funding round. Brett is not your typical tech founder. He's had successful career in sales at giants like Oracle and Cloudera. He's founded multiple companies, including a social betting platform, and he even authored a novel about a life and death expedition in Patagonia. He's here to talk about what it takes to scale a business in a massive, fragmented industry that's long overdue for a revolution. Brett, it's great to have you.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Brett, you said at one point, we're not here to slightly improve vehicle repair management. We're rebuilding it from the ground up. That's a bold mission. To take on a massive broken industry like that, you need more than just a good idea. What's the one scaling insight you're applying to this problem?
Okay, so let me just take one quick step backwards because I think it's kind of funny how you introed car repair. The whole like all human beings understand it because we have a love-hate relationship with it. And
Yeah.
I'd like to double down on mainly it's hate, 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 hate. When we first started the company and I explained to people what we were doing, uh, a lot of my previous companies were like deep tech to where like I explained it to somebody not in technology and they'd be like, I don't understand what you just said. But when
Right.
yeah, I mean, it was like what edge computing, open source. I don't understand any of that. But when I started to tell people, we now give people the ability to repair a vehicle on your phone. Everybody wants to do everything on their phone, and when we got into it, we were just consumer. We had pivoted away from that, but generally speaking, we're digitizing the process of vehicle repair. To get to your original question, there's definitely a flywheel effect. As we add more vehicles into the platform and add more repair shops, we get more efficient and we get more scale.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I wanted to ask you about that. That ServiceUp is a classic marketplace, connecting fleets and insurers to a network of repair shops. So scaling a two-sided marketplace is notoriously difficult. Can you break down the playbook for us? How do you solve that chicken and egg problem of building both supply and demand at the same time, especially when you're trying to grow at venture speed?
So we're very lucky. Our largest customers, some of them I can mention, like Merchants Fleet, Six Rental Car. I'm not supposed to talk about Amazon, so I won't talk about Amazon.
Never heard of them.
Never heard of them. They are taking our technology and having their existing shop network run our technology. So they're going to their large repair partners, the
Oh,
Goodyears of the world, and they're saying, if you want to work on our Amazon vans, you will use this platform. So in a lot of ways, we're getting both sides of the market filled by our largest customers demanding that the shop side use our technology.
fantastic. So, question about that pivot you were talking about, starting with consumer and now let's call it more or less B2B.
Yes.
When you think about other CEOs, because CEOs are listening to this podcast who are heads down, grinding on that initial vision, they might miss the bigger, more scalable opportunity right in front of them. What are some advice you could give to CEOs to see something they may not have seen when they first started the company?
I'm a big believer in stealing other people's good ideas. So in a lot of ways, that is what I've done. I've gone out and I've looked at how other similar industries, and I always compare the DoorDash model.
Mm,
Um, I went out and I looked at how DoorDash scaled, and we mimicked that early on. We made mistakes in the process along the way, but like a lot of like reading DoorDash's early go-to-market, allowed us to avoid mistakes. And then now looking back on where DoorDash didn't make right pivots or address the market appropriately, we're doing the same thing in how we're scaling. So I guess my advice to other CEOs is it's good to steal. Just go steal other people's good ideas.
Fantastic. I love that idea. I'm lucky in my world because I talk to CEOs all day long and I learn from each conversation. And so I want to share that with the next person I'm talking to. So this is great. Um,
I think your job would be great because you get to your front line talking to people leading, and on a probably daily, weekly, monthly basis, you get to look at all these problems that people are solving and get how they are solving them. I actually kind of envy what you do.
you're exactly right. I get a little bit more information and I apply that every day. So you're right. I'm fascinated by the kind of work that I do. Now, going back to advice for CEOs, what about a CEO who might be struggling to scale and maybe they feel like they're on life support? What's the first move you think they need to make besides, stealing ideas from someone else?
This is something I've had to learn by mistakes. Um, do not spend money unless you have the money to spend, which seems like the most obvious statements that any CEO could ever make in the history of statements. But when our Series A was led by Tiger Global, and like
Oh,
all of a sudden we were coming out of a garage startup, and I felt like I could just turn on the spigot. And at the time, the spigot wasn't that much because we had 13 people.
yeah.
Uh, but I have learned through mild mistakes, just, watch every 5 cent, even if you have, if you just raise $15 million, $50 million, $100 million. And I think one of the things that is nice about today's venture world, if you rewind 10 years ago, it was more about scale at all costs. And I now believe, generally speaking, the venture community is looking at, um, you know, scaling at a much more frugal rate.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, there are some exceptions which we read about every day that are pure AI platform companies, but those are exceptions, and that doesn't really address 99% of the businesses out there. So, yeah, I really like your advice.
And then one of the other ones that I think uh, was an eye opener for me is like, we start reading articles, we start listening to podcasts, and we think everything's going to be a unicorn, or like the growth numbers are going to be like 1,000% every other day. And like the notion that like most of the solid companies out there that aren't the top 10 on planet Earth, they've just grown over time through sheer grit, wise decisions. And it's not always like you don't become a unicorn overnight. And I think founders really need to focus in on that and just
Yeah,
understand that it is a process.
yeah, yeah, and I really like that advice. I want to share that with some of my other CEOs because they are envious of one of my CEOs keeps talking about lovable. Like, why can't we be lovable? Whatever their massive revenue is in a very, very short period of time. And a lot of that is just pure luck. And
Yeah.
I even think about Nvidia. Okay, Nvidia if you look at the chart of growth of Nvidia, it was very slow for a very long time,
Oh yeah.
and they just kept at it, kept building better chips, and the market essentially came to them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people realize how long Nvidia's been around for. Uh, I was dealing with them about 15 years ago, and they were pulling people out of Cisco at the time.
Right?
And I remember looking at these Cisco people that were going to Nvidia, thinking, "What in the hell are they leaving Cisco to go to Nvidia for?" And now all those people are flying around in PJs, driving Ferraris. So shows you what I know.
That's right. So I want to ask you about your book, Cowboy Now, which chronicles a near fatal expedition in Patagonia. So, when you faced a literal life or death situation in a snow cave, how does that change your perspective as a CEO? How does that experience inform the risks you take and the way you lead your team through the chaos of scaling a startup?
Um, so I'll reference two things from my experience. So quickly, I wrote the book. I wrote the book 20 years ago now, the actual experience happened about 25 years ago. And we were parts of an expedition. There were about 10 of us, and we were doing a west to east crossing of the northern Patagonia ice field, fourth largest ice field in the world. It had only been crossed once before. Directly in the middle of it, we got hit by a massive blizzard, forced into snow caves, existed in the snow caves for 2 weeks, nearly freezing to death, ran out of food, had to hike for a week without food. So, two things I pull from that on a daily basis. One, my father, who recently passed away, always used to remind me when I'd complain about anything. He goes, "Well, you could be stuck in a snow cave, slowly dying. So how's it compare?" And I always be like, "Why does he always bring this up?" But it's true. Like that was like the most miserable thing I'd ever gone through. And so, kind of like the grit and building a company. If I would actually put it in perspective, you know, working 18 hours a day is nothing compared to like nearly dying for 18 hours a day. And then the other
Yeah.
one, which I really, really have actually thought about recently, because for some reason a lot of people have brought up the book recently, is there was a time when we were nearly about to die. Like we were all like, you could just tell that we were in a very, very bad way. And our main snow cave had collapsed, and
Oh,
everybody like starting to get hypothermia. And I grabbed a shovel to go dig another snow cave. And the only reason I did it is because I knew that shoveling would keep me warm. Like it wasn't like I was trying to be heroic. I wasn't trying to be like that guy. I just knew if I started digging again that I would warm up. And I equate that to building a company because a lot of times when you're perplexed either by something you can't solve or the financials or maybe your product market fit isn't perfect, just keep working. Just keep working and eventually, if you keep working and keep digging and keep chopping at it, something will break free.
oh, that is a great story. That's fantastic. And so I could see how that can apply to almost anyone who's feeling like things aren't going to work out, but we just got to keep working at it and discover a way to make it work.
Yes.
Wow. So this might be related to that, which is you had a great career in sales at places like Oracle and a path that's, let's call it stable and lucrative, but you left it to jump into the uncertainty of being a founder, not once, but multiple times. So what was that personal trigger that made you walk away from that corporate safety and decide you had to build things for yourself?
When I was little, I always thought I was going to be a contractor and build houses. So and I loved Legos. I was like a Legos fanatic, and I like building tree houses. So I generally like to build things, even in sales. Like the majority of the first part of my career was heavy into just either being an individual contributor in sales or a sales manager. So I like to build sales deals. I like to build sales teams. I like to build culture. So it was sort of a natural transition to come and build companies. Um,
Yeah,
I'm of the belief that building is building, whether you're building a platform, a process, a culture, a company. Um, and then once you really get hooked on building, obviously when you're in a larger company, uh, building is not quite the same thing. There's not as much room for like shift and change and being dynamic.
right,
So the
right.
smaller the company, the kind of more you can build and the more freedom you have to build and the more creativity involved.
That's fantastic. So at one point in my career, I was in venture capital and I had the opportunity to start coaching the CEOs of our portfolio companies. And if you look broadly at VC backed CEOs over a 5 year period, 60% of them get fired. And when I look more deeply at that, I realized the reason they were getting fired is they were not scaling with the company. They were not themselves taking on new abilities as a CEO. So I wanted to ask you in your journey here, you were a company maybe pre-seed or seed before you got your A, and there are certain things you need to be excellent as a CEO. After the A, that shifts, and now you're in the B round or have raised a B round. Tell us a little bit about what you think are the most critical scaling skills that a CEO needs to have in each of those three categories.
Um, okay, so I actually tried to give up the job after the Series A. I had
Really?
somebody, yeah, I had somebody teed up to be CEO who had led multiple startups, sold multiple startups, taken a company public. And so I was ready to bring in my replacement, and then I was going to step into more of like a like maybe a sales role. This is early on, so this is over 2.5 years ago now. And when we raised the Series A, Tiger Global said, "You're not giving up the job. We backed you. You're the CEO." And so I had to settle in because there's certain things about a CEO job that I'm not comfortable with. And so
Yeah.
I think one of the number one things is understanding what you're bad at and being open to getting better.
Ah,
So I'm very
that's
aware.
very open, by the way. That's a very open mindset.
Well, maybe I'm just maybe I'm bad at so much that it's very obvious at what I'm bad at. So I also know what I'm good at. So I focus on what I'm good at, and what I'm bad at, I generally hire around myself.
Good.
Um, your original question, I'm probably getting a little too far away from, but I think one of the big things of not getting yourself fired as you evolve your own company and bring on more money and more commitments and more expectations, and kind of lose control where you can be voted out of your own company. I think just being open to knowing what you need to get better at, I think is huge for a kind of a founder CEO, of just being honest with yourself of like, I know I'm good at certain things. I know I'm bad at certain things. Let's bring on a coach like yourself to, get to the point where you're a more professional, quote unquote, CEO.
Right. Right. That's great. What I often tell CEOs is, look, you don't need to be great at everything, but you do need to be competent enough to manage people in everything. And so, if you have a particular area you feel is a weak area, you've got to get up to a certain level where you can hire the right people and manage those people so they're successful. So then you can go focus on the things you're really great at.
Yeah. And I would say that the one thing that you cannot be bad at in being a CEO as you scale past 20 people is you have to be able to manage effectively. If you cannot connect with other human beings, if you can't manage other human beings, if you can't motivate other human beings, you're going to have a trouble, in my opinion. There's different types of CEOs. There's more technical CEOs. There's more business CEOs. But I would say that the one thing that you have to have in common as you scale is you have to be able to manage human beings and treat them like human beings.
That's great. I love that. And I often quote one of my CEOs who said to me at one point, Glenn, this job would be so easy if it weren't for all these human beings who report to me.
That is, that is so true.
So I want to finish up in the final category here, my favorite topic, which is AI and how it relates to both running a company and how AI fits into the product of companies. So, how does it change how you think about scaling ServiceUp? Does it just make your current platform more efficient, or do you see it fundamentally transforming the entire auto repair ecosystems in ways we can't even imagine today?
I believe uh, both those things are accurate. I believe our current platform is more efficient with layers of AI that we've already layered in. Uh, and I'm of the belief, as a lot of people are, that you will have these multi-billion-dollar companies slash platforms that don't have to scale to 1,000 people or 5,000 people or 50,000 people. I believe that with automation and AI, ServiceUp will scale up to about 150 to 175 people, and then we will automate most of the processes that are currently manual with humans in the loop. uh, I'm also of the belief that human beings are always going to be required, because even if I make my team more efficient, there is always going to be a need for the physical world in repairing vehicles. So
Right.
I will never be 100% just an automated platform where I could be an evil genius sitting in a closet by myself. I have to tether myself to the physical world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What about inside your company, and how do you think about AI in operations and software development?
Um, we're actually going through the process right now of we like, and we're doing this internally. We talk to our senior most developers to see just kind of the general mindset of how they view AI, how they're engaging the platforms that can generate code. And we're trying to figure out if our, because a lot of times, let's say you're a genius and we have some really smart developers. Are they going to have a harder time turning over the reins to like an AI platform that generates code? Maybe, maybe a developer who would be considered like B level is going to have an easier time engaging these platforms and generating code. And then we're also looking at that the kids coming out of college. do you want somebody who like maybe is a savant coming out of Stanford or Harvard, or maybe you want somebody who's like a little more attached to the real world, who's going to understand how to leverage all the different AI platforms out there. I will
You know
say
that.
this.
No, go ahead.
So we have an agent that calls into shops and talks to our shops. So we have a large shop network, hundreds of thousands of shops that are running our technology. And we have an agent that calls them and talks to them. And 6 months ago, you could kind of tell it was an agent. You get it on the phone, there was a little delay. Sometimes if you'd cough, they wouldn't understand. Or if I'm like on the phone talking to the agent and I like say something to somebody else, you get confused. You fast forward just 3 months, 90 days. So 90 trips of going around, spinning around, 90 days. You can't even tell it's an agent. It's actually, it's kind of spooky. In 90 days, it goes from like, I can tell I'm talking to a robot. 90 days later, no idea you're talking to a robot. So
Wow. Wow.
I definitely feel like the world in which we're evolving is great, spectacular, but also somewhat shocking, to an older guy like myself.
That's amazing. That is amazing. I just want to make one comment before we wrap up on your comment about, do we hire that high level person who comes out of a prestigious university, or maybe we hire someone who's more tethered to the real world? And I want to use that thinking when I talk to my other CEOs, because all of them want to add AI talent to the team, but they can't compete with Google and Meta and Amazon, et cetera. They just can't. And so this is a way to do that, is to not necessarily go for the top tier, but rather people who are very good at using the tools that are available. And I think it applies, frankly, well beyond software development. It applies to every function inside the company.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that you can leverage the benefits of the companies that are really building out like the elite LLMs, like the Googles, like the Amazons, like the Facebooks, where they're paying I mean, we always like see these numbers of like, people are getting paid millions or billions of dollars in bonuses. So you can just leverage that technology and then find people who know how to use the tools to tap into the technology.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We'll let them go spend the money and we'll leverage what they've built for us.
Yes.
Brett, fantastic. I really enjoy this. How can people reach you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Brett Carlson at ServiceUp, or just if you really want to talk to me, bec@serviceup.com. There's my email.
Fantastic, Brett. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. Great talking to you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of The Scaling CEO. If you found this valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with a fellow CEO who could benefit. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a quick rating, as it really helps more people find the show. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. See you next time for more proven strategies to grow your business and leadership.